Hi there, my name is Abu and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will try to demystify the Flexbox as much as I can. Basically, the Flexbox is a layout module in CSS. We have other layout modules like the block or the inline or the grid layout. And when you're designing with CSS, you can choose between this and you can specify how you want your objects to align themselves inside a certain block. Flexbox is becoming more popular because it makes it easy to design flexible and responsive layout structures without using the float or the positioning. If all of this sounds new to you and you're not familiar with them, that's perfectly okay. I will try to explain this Flexbox and how you can use it in your next projects. So without wasting any time, let's jump in and get started. For this video, I'm going to use Microsoft's VS Code, and I have my project application already running, and I have created a file called index.html where I'm going to put all my HTML, and I will create another file and I'll call it index.css for my CSS designs and styles, and I can close this. And in my index.html, I will use VS Code's inbuilt emmet, and I'll just put an exclamation mark and then press the tab on my keyboard, and I'll have this boilerplate code. This is all I need for this application, and maybe I can rename this to Flexbox. You can leave it, doesn't matter. And then I want to import my CSS into this file, so I'll just type in link and I'll link with the CSS file, and my CSS file is going to be, I will have it in the same folder and link my CSS. To show you how the Flexbox works, I won't really do anything fancy. I will only have one parent div that will act as the container for all the child divs that I will have inside the same parent. So I'll just give this a class name of parent. And inside the parent, I'm going to create two new divs. So if I want to create another div, I'll call it a div and I press enter, and then I'll give it a class name. I'll call this child1, and then I'll create another div and I'll give it a class and I'll call this child2. And when I save this, and I have an extension here that I'm running, and the extension is called live server. You can use that extension also. It makes your computer act as a local server to your application. So live server, you can download this and install it. And I have this installed already. So all I'll do is come back to my files and right click on index.html, and I'll click run with live server. And this should run in the browser, but we cannot see anything here because we haven't done anything yet to this parent and child divs. So the first thing I'll do is start to design my CSS. So come to index.css. I will put this side by side. So I'll just click on this and I'll have them side by side. So the first thing I'm going to do is design the parent. So to access a class, you need to start with a dot. So dot parent. And the first thing I'll do, I want to give this a background color so that we can actually see what we are doing. So this color, I'm just going to give it aquamarine. It doesn't matter. You can choose any color you want. Let me make this a bit bigger. Over there, that's nice. And then the next thing is the display that we want to give. So this display has so many options. Like I said, if you press Control and spacebar, it will give you all the options you can have in display. So these are all the displays you can have in CSS. But our point of interest is the Flexbox. So we're going to say display flex, and then I'm going to save this. Let's see what happens. Let me open my browser. I still don't see anything in my browser when I reload. This is because we need to start designing also the child divs. In the next line, I'm going to say .child1. I'm going to give this a width and height. So for height, I'll give it about 150 pixels. Should be good for us to see. And then width, I'll give it also 150 pixels, and we have something like a square. So when I save this, let's come back and I should see the parent div with the background. Now we cannot see the child div because I'll try to give it a color so that you can see. So background color, I want to pick something. I'll pick, and I save this. So I should see my first child. Very nice. So I can name this, maybe give it a name here. I'll say child 1. And then on this other one, I can say child 2. So I'm going to save this. And then when I come back to my application, I should see child 1 and child 2. So child 2 the same way, I'm going to give it the same properties. So dot child 2, and then I'll also give it a height. I can just copy all of this, height and width, they're going to be the same, and I paste this here. So when I save, I should see child 2. Let me just give it a background color, and this I'm going to give it maybe coral. So I should see child 1 and child 2. So these are my two divs. Now, how does the Flexbox come in play? So already here in the parent container, we have made it display to be the flex. So how do we start using this Flexbox container? There are so many options. So first and foremost, I want to show you how you can make these two divs occupy 100% of the spaces that they are meant to occupy. What do I mean? So when I come to the first child and I say flex, and I give it a 1, meaning that occupy almost half of the entire parent div. So I'll come to the next one and also give it a flex, and I'll also give it 1. So when I save this, you should see they will both occupy 50% of the parent. That is flex 1. It occupies the entire space as much as it can, and it divides it equally amongst the two children. For example, if I give this flex 2, that means one will occupy 75% and the other will occupy 50%. So child 2 is occupying 75% because we gave it a flex of 2. So I'll just leave this to flex 1 and save this for now. But to actually make you see how Flexbox is very powerful, I'm going to create 2 more children. So I come back to my HTML file. I'll just copy this down. So Shift Alt and the down button, I copy it 2 times, and I'll change this to 3, and I'll change this to child 3, and 4, and I'll change this to child 4. So when I have to save this, remember to save. And when I come back to my designs, I could actually just copy all of this down. So Shift Alt and 1 and 2, copy it down. So this is child 3 and this is child 4. So I'll just change this background color, maybe Control and spacebar. It gives you the options, and I can choose any of these other colors, maybe chocolates. I love chocolate, so definitely chocolate is gonna be one of the options. So Control and spacebar again, and I'm gonna give this cornflower blue. So when I save this, I should see 4 children equally spaced out within the parent component. I'm gonna remove this flex 1 for now, so that I can actually show you how you can control how these children can be spaced with the parent. So when I save this, I should come back and see. So the parent is aqua, remember? The color of the parent is aquamarine. So anytime you see aquamarine, that's the parent, and we have the children. So what can we do? Minus using the flex 1, what can we do with the parent to have all these children occupy the spaces, and how we move them around the way we want? The first thing we can do is to justify this content. We want to justify this content, and for example, we can give space around. So when I save this, you should see spaces around all the children. So already you can see that I haven't done anything with the children. All I'm doing is I'm using the parent, and the Flexbox is going to take care of whatever display needs that you're going to want. This is space around, and you can imagine it's giving spaces around all these children. The other one we can use is space between. This is also a very interesting one. So as you can see with the space between, meaning that the first and the last child will start from the boundaries of the parent, and then it gives equal spaces in between all the children. If I added another child here, the spaces will be equally distributed between the children. So I could add another one here and say, okay, I want space evenly. So just as it suggests, space evenly means that the first and the last child will not start from the boundaries of the parent from the left and right, but it will give spaces between all the children, and they will be evenly spaced. As you can see, the spaces between all the children are evenly spaced, which is amazing. Flexbox is very, very powerful. So the other thing we can do with the Flexbox is, what if this device gets smaller? For example, I'm going to take this back to space evenly, or rather space between, doesn't matter. But what if the size of this device is going to reduce and become smaller? What happens? Let's see what happens. So when I press F12 on my keyboard, I bring in the developer tools, and I'll want to toggle the devices. So I click on this, and this first one is just going to be a responsive one, meaning that I can play with it the way I want. Let me make this 100% so that it's more visible. So this device has a width of 1240. So I'm just going to try to reduce this width. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to reduce the width. The spaces are still equally the same. And what happens? This is a very small device. And as you can see, the children are going to shrink according to the size of the device. And still you can imagine it's still keeping the size of the children equally the same, and they're all occupying the same amount of space. So you can continue reducing this, but the children will respond according to the size of the device. And when they get bigger and when they start breaking off and give the space, that means the width is now exactly 150%, or rather 150 pixels, the one that we gave it. So at this point, the width is 150 pixels. As we go further, the width is going to reduce. And when you get bigger, this is 150 pixels. So it gives it the space between here. But this is not a very good design mechanism. A good design would be, as the device gets smaller, we want this child number 4 to go under or to go below. And as the device gets even smaller, even child 3 should come below here. That should actually look a little more better than having all of them condensed into one row. I'm going to come back here, and then I'm going to say flex wrap. It's over here. So when I make this to wrap, by default, it's no wrap. So when this is wrapped, that means if the device is smaller, the 4th child is going to be dropped to the next available row. So as you can see, the 4th child is down, and the more I make this smaller, and the 3rd child should also come down, and all of them are now on one row. So you see, without even having to write any lines of code or float or positioning, the Flexbox takes care of all of this for you with one line of code. That is the flex wrap. So as the device gets smaller and smaller, the children are going to go to the next row and next row, and they're going to go back to the first row. And this is very, very powerful without even writing it. Just with one line of code, and you have this feature in your application. This is very, very powerful. So what else can we do here? Now, in the parent, by default, we have what we call the flex direction. Now, this flex direction, by default, it's in a row. So if I have it in a row, when I save this, I should still see the same output, the same result, same thing. But what if you want to make this a column? Let's see what happens. So flex direction, I'm going to make this a column. So when I save this, let's see what happens. As you must have guessed, it's going to put all the children in a column. So if the device is smaller, they will still stay in a column. So what else can we do with these directions? I can say row reverse, this one right here. Let's see what happens when you reverse these rows. So when I save this, and as you must have guessed, all the children are reversed. So number 4 is appearing where number 1 was, and 3 was number 2, and 2 is now number 3, and 1 is now number 4. This is very, very powerful and really interesting. You can imagine you can do anything you want with this by just using a few lines of code. So what else can we do with justifying the content? Let's see. So control and spacebar, it should give you all these options. You can flex start. So when I save this, it should start from the right of your screen and the parent still has space on the left of the screen. What happens when we say flex end? So space, and we say flex end, and we save this. What happens? And as you must have guessed, it's gonna come back to the right. So there are many options that you can use to justify these contents. And according to your design needs, there are many options that you can start with here. But most of the time, you're going to use these three: space around, or space between, or space evenly. But there's still many options that you can use. So I'll just put this back to space between, and I'll save this. I should have the same look as we had before with the wrapping that we put, and we can make this smaller and make this bigger as we want. So with these few lines of code, I hope I have tried to demystify the Flexbox. And if you have any questions or if you have any challenges with the Flexbox, please leave the comments below and I'll try to explain as much as I can. So with this video, this is a small introduction to Flexbox. I hope it can make you start using the Flexbox in your next projects. And with this, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.